Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell, welcome to your post-vaginal probe world, a world that you have created.
I have to ask you about this red-hot story that's gotten so much ink, so many women in particular fired up.
Virginia drew national attention for the proposal that was, my understanding is that they did.
This was a bill, an abortion bill, that would have mandated that women get what's called a transvaginal ultrasound if they were getting an abortion.
This was not always Bob McDonnell's world. The thing everybody was clamoring to ask him about until a couple of weeks ago was how vice presidential he was looking.
I could be looking at the next running mate here.
Some people say the guy sitting across from me be a pretty good number 2 on the ticket.
But you'd be open to it?
Well, look, if somebody called and said you could help our country, help our ticket, I think any of us would think about it.
Before he became the vaginal probe guy, Bob McDonnell was the guy who got showered with flattering questions about his political promise practically everywhere he went. But then the last week and a half happened. Republicans in Virginia were all set to make a new law requiring Virginia women to undergo a vaginal probe ultrasound before the state would allow them to get an abortion. It passed both houses of the Virginia legislature. Governor McDonnell had already said he would sign it. And then the national media noticed, and everyone, including us, freaked out. It made its way onto Saturday Night Live last weekend. There was a big silent protest outside the Capitol in Richmond on Monday. There were big unsilent protests all over the Capitol grounds yesterday. Governor McDonnell and Virginia Republicans tried to back away from the national disaster they had created for themselves by claiming that they had no idea that they were requiring such an invasive procedure. They tried amending their legislation so that they're still having the government force your doctor to do medical procedures to you against your will. You're still forced to have a political ultrasound mandated by the state, but the new requirement would stop just short of that forced state-mandated ultrasound being forced state-mandated vaginal penetration. It's kind of hard to unring that bell. And all the trying in the world has not saved Bob McDonnell from a new political reality in which he is the vaginal ultrasound guy. He's the vaginal probe guy now. Personally, ever since the Washington Post put his mid-career thesis from Pat Robertson's Televangelist College online, I've always thought of him as the homosexuals and fornicators guy. But now to the wide world, he is the vaginal ultrasound guy. Now the thing everybody is dying to ask him about is this vaginal probe bill.
You flip-flopped on this, you backed the bill, and now you say no. Why?
No, Jerry, I think you've got it wrong. I support the concept of an ultrasound requirement and it's part of the formal informed consent. I still support that. What I requested is simply an amendment that requires an abdominal ultrasound.
Now, what we realized after I said, no, I support the bill. I still support the bill.
So in his first interviews in his new post-vaginal probe world, Governor Bob McDonnell wants to make it very clear that he still supports this measure. He still supports the government mandating a medical procedure for political reasons, just not necessarily the one that goes inside your vagina. Bob McDonnell is really resisting his new political identity as the vaginal probe guy.
As you were educating yourself on this bill, did you originally not realize that it might mandate an invasive procedure?
You have to realize this wasn't my bill. Normally a governor would review these hundreds and hundreds of bills when they get to your desk. You're so busy advocating your agenda, you don't read every legislator's bill. But we can't always help what the media decides to focus on.
It wasn't my bill. I just said that I would sign it. I don't even care about ultrasounds. I'm focused on, can we talk about something other than this? Now, there are probably innumerable Democrats who would love to be the Democrat who gets to debate the vaginal probe guy about what's important to the country, right? Unfortunately today for Bob McDonnell, there was a Democrat on hand to do just that. Mr. McDonnell was being interviewed by Politico.com right alongside, about 3 inches away from Maryland's governor, Democrat Martin O'Malley. Now, we are used to sharp political rhetoric being thrown around in the abstract in our country. But this kind of scene is actually pretty rare in our politics. They're 3 inches apart. Governor O'Malley delivering what turned out to be a screed on everything wrong with Governor McDonnell's politics, while Governor McDonnell sat right next to him, 3 inches away, visibly squirming the whole time.
I would also dare to predict that in Virginia, where they have seen what happens when you put Republicans totally in charge, they have seen their legislature take a hard right turn And that's exactly the sort of overreach that they saw in Wisconsin, which has the 49th worst job creation rate, the sort of overreach they saw in Ohio, which has the 30th worst job creation rate, and also what they've seen in Florida, which has the 45th worst job creation rate. They say, vote for us, things will get better, and then you vote for the Republicans, and they take a hard right turn, outlawing gay relationships, outlawing women's rights, outlawing unions, outlawing and throwing all sorts of social wedge issues out there when what people really care about is jobs and the economy.
Governor, I had a hunch we'd mix it up eventually here. I better let you respond to that. Then I do want to get questions over on the wings where I haven't gone.
Well, all I can say is Governor O'Malley's the only one that's got social issues at the top of his agenda. I don't.
Yes, you do, actually. Nice try, but you were the one who said you would sign the mandated vaginal probe bill when it was clear that that's what it was. You may have backed off that now that it's hurting you politically, but people have a way of not forgetting that you were the mandated vaginal probe guy. That kind of thing sticks with you. Bob McDonnell's whole career has been as a hard right, social conservative, punish the fornicators, forced ultrasound kind of guy. He still is. And he may not want to be thought of that way anymore. Who would? But actions speak louder than words, Governor Probe. The real question now is whether or not Bob McDonnell, the vaginal probe guy, is still on the vice presidential shortlist. In a political party in which all of the remaining candidates for president have voiced support for so-called personhood measures that would ban all abortion and likely ban hormonal contraception as well, a party that is fighting against access to birth control, who knows? Maybe this actually isn't bad for Governor Bob McDonnell. Maybe the vaginal probe guy is exactly who the Republican Party in 2012 is looking for in a presidential running mate. Joining us now is the Democratic Party's former communications director, now a columnist for The Hill and an MSNBC political analyst, Karen Finney. I should also note that Karen is a board member for NARAL Pro-Choice America. Karen, thank you very much for your time. It's nice to see you.
Good to be with you, Rachel. You know, you don't look so scary to me. The thing about Bob McDonnell is the whole ultrasound thing happened after he told Laura Ingraham he wanted to come on this show. But even before we started calling him Governor Vaginal Probe, he still wouldn't return the calls. I think he was flat out lying. I think he might have been. That's not right.
No. Anyway, I know as the Democrats' communications director, you'd never call anybody Governor Vaginal Probe. But I wonder.
I never would. Honestly, Rachel, I never would have thought that we would be in a position to actually call someone Governor Vaginal Probe, Transvaginal Probe. I mean, did you ever think you would be having this conversation on your show?
Never in my life. Never. Not just on my show. Never in my world.
I know.
Really, never. But I've been training myself to say these things. I'm still all red, but do you think that Governor McDonnell's prospects for being the vice presidential nominee are totally scuttled by this, or do you think that actually this, in some weird way, in this year in Republican politics, this might not be that bad?
You know, it's hard to tell based on the line of action that Republicans have chosen to take. I mean, think about the level of activity that we've had over the last several months and weeks. I mean, essentially the Republican Party has now aligned itself with the Vatican. And you have 98% of Catholic women, use contraception. So the Vatican can't even convince its own women in America of their policies, and the Republican Party thinks that's the place to go. I mean, and I think they're also not paying attention to the fact that women have very much been awakened over the last several months. Again, look at these Republican legislatures and these sort of anti-women bills, having to prove that you were raped in order to, use Medicare or Medicaid to have an abortion. I mean, some of the, redefining rape, letting women die. I mean, the level of conversation we've been having, and then contraception, and the reaction that we saw when Susan G. Komen Foundation really stepped over the line. I mean, I think McDonnell is this is a culmination of all of that activity and all of women sort of recognizing, and even some in the Republican Party, that, transvaginal insertion is probably over the line. Maybe contraception is getting up to the line, but I think they've totally miscalculated where the American people are.
Well, I wonder if, I think that it has become part of the national conversation, and I think you're right that all of these things have sort of cumulatively built to the point where this is not an avoidable discussion anymore. But I wonder, from the Democratic perspective, do you think we're now at a part where resistance to the Republicans' abortion agenda is a national political issue for Democrats. Obviously, this is an issue that people want to talk about, but do Democrats want to talk about being the ones that who are going to stand up and stop them on this?
I think we should. I think that Democrats should, and we were actually talking about this earlier today at our NARAL board meeting, that to me, the way I see this is, we have an opportunity to have a conversation with Americans that says, it's not about the procedure at some point, and I think that that's part of what has reinvigorated and reawakened women in a lot of ways. It is, at some point, it's about fundamental liberty and personal freedom, that my government tells me I have to have some kind of probe inserted into my vagina. If that isn't government intervention, I don't know what is, right? And even in these conversations about contraception, I wrote about this last week. When in 1936, people believed that contraception should be available. So the culture wars and the nature of the conversation, I think, has really shifted. I think you're seeing that when it comes to gay rights and marriage equality, and certainly I think we've seen the backlash on contraception, I think, has shown that. And I think Democrats have an opportunity to open a conversation with people that, again, is about not necessarily the procedure, but about this fundamental concept of liberty and freedom. And certainly as women, we need to step up and take ownership of the fact that if we're going to be seen as equal human beings in this country, no man gets to tell me when I've been raped.
Former DNC communications director, columnist for The Hill, MSNBC political analyst Karen Finney, fired up and ready to go tonight. Karen, this story is equally bewildering and enraging, but thank you for joining us and being willing to talk about it tonight. I appreciate it.
Good to be with you.
All right. The best new thing in the world today is sort of an antidote to all of this. The best new thing in the world today is one of these things that makes me very, very, very glad, and very glad for our country. Please stay tuned. It's next.